Welcome back. All right, so news of the day for all you fine people for your Valentine's Day 2023. So, happy Valentine's Day to people who are in couples, and if you're not, I mean, in some cases, people are better off just being on their own and having all the chocolate and all the flowers for themselves. So, that's when you have a treat yourself kind of day, right? So, if you've watched Parks and Rec, I think treat yourself day should be Valentine's Day for the singles. All right, that being said, moving along to the news of the day for all you fine people on the internet. Starting off with, as I mentioned in the preview earlier, Alex Ovechkin has stepped away from the Capitals to deal with a family matter. We do not know what that family matter is. We do not know the timeline that this family matter will require for him to be away from the team. It absolutely impacts Washington and their playoff chase. They've already been having trouble with scoring goals recently. With Ovechkin out of the lineup, that's not going to help. We'll see who steps up and what happens for the Capitals from here, but we have no idea how long Ovechkin's going to be out, just that he's stepped away for a family matter. So all the best to him with that. Gavrikov in Columbus is going to be getting the Chychrun treatment. So I agree with this. The reason I agree with this is simple. Gavrikov, in the style of hockey that he plays as a defenseman, he could absolutely end up getting hurt. He could get hurt blocking a shot. He could get hurt taking or throwing a check. There's reasons to think that, Gavrikov in the style of hockey he plays could lead to injury. So keeping him out for trade-related reasons makes sense, and that's the plan now for Columbus. Same plan as with Chychrun with Arizona, and I'm fine with that. I think that with defensemen, especially the defensemen that do a lot of shot blocking and a lot of defending, it makes sense to have them out of the lineup because you don't want them getting hurt. You don't want them getting hurt. In Gavrikov's case, he's a UFA this summer. They want to get a trade done with him and maximize the return. So Gavrikov's going to sit until he gets traded. So the debate has emerged with Calgary, and I'm going to weigh in on it here. I like Markstrom. I do. But the numbers at this point do point to Dan Vladar being the better of the two goaltenders. Now, Vladar hasn't been setting the world on fire himself, although his record is much better than Markstrom's. He's 11-5-4 with a .903 save percentage. Markstrom, on the other hand, is 14-13-7 with an .891 save percentage. Markstrom's had a real struggle this season. There's a part of me that says, if Demko wants out of Vancouver, maybe you trade Demko to Calgary for Markstrom just for maximum, absolute, complete, and total panic. And what? Well, who did what? Why? Again, that trade doesn't work, but it was the first thought I had was, bring him back to Vancouver. We could send Demko to Calgary, let the chaos ensue. But at any rate, for Markstrom, after last year where he had the remarkably excellent first half of the season, fell back to earth a little bit in the second half of the season, and this year it's been a rough year right from the beginning. So the problem being, if you give Vladar the net right now, you're basically making it so he's going to be your starter in the playoffs. We have no idea what you're going to get there. But the other side of it is, if you play Markstrom a bunch from here, you might not make the playoffs at all. So. And I'm just saying, just with the current numbers, but let me know your thoughts. Should Markstrom play less? Should Vladar play more? Should they just keep trying to get Markstrom going? Because if they're going to go anywhere in the playoffs, they would need the 2020 playoff version of Jacob Markstrom. I'm mentioning 2020 because when he was with Vancouver that year, he had a really strong playoff until he got hurt, and then Demko had to take over, and Demko did pretty well in relief. Speaking of Vancouver, coming out of last night's game, Tocchet's just saying what we already know. Yeah, the team doesn't know the basics. How many times did we hear Bruce Boudreau over the last, 6 months, just completely flustered at the fact that this team, the effort just wasn't there, the results weren't there, and he had tried. It just felt like he had tried whatever he could, and it just wasn't working. And so the coach bump, which we heard a lot about, it's there in most cases, but with the Canucks, it really hasn't been. Even though their schedule isn't that tough from here, it doesn't matter if your team's not playing well. And they're not playing as a cohesive unit. That's part of the problem, too. So he said last night after the game, no more breaking sticks. Don't act entitled. And people immediately went, oh, JT Miller. It's not just JT. I understand that he's a lightning rod with his temperament, but it's not just JT that's frustrated and smashing a stick out there. Also, Tocchet basically saying, I got to bring this team back to basics. Yep. The problem is you're trying to do that in February. If you want to bring the team back to basics, it's probably going to be a training camp thing. They're going to need some time off. They're going to need to refocus. And clearly the All-Star break did not do that for the team. But, of course, when you're trading your captain around the All-Star break, that's sending a message to this team that, yeah, we're going into that retool/rebuild. And you can see the team's frustrated. I totally get why the team's frustrated. I get why Tocchet's frustrated. But he's not saying anything we don't know. He's not saying anything that Canuck fans watching this team for the last 4 months wouldn't already know. It's a team that does need that dramatic change, however that takes place, and we'll see what happens. Good news for Leafs fans. Austin Matthews in a regular jersey at practice, so he could return as soon as tomorrow for Toronto. And that would be great news for them. Toronto's record has stayed pretty strong without Austin Matthews. I think they played pretty well without him. Yes, that loss against Columbus wasn't fantastic, but that being said, I think they played pretty well without him in the lineup. Now, of course, we're 17 days away from the trade deadline. As high as speculation is right now, you'll notice there's not anything on the board regarding trades other than Gavrikov being held out for potential trade reasons. And a lot of discussion as well about just media over the last little while here and how tough it is for NHL media. One thing with the trade deadline now as opposed to 10/20, especially like 30 years ago, trades used to be plentiful. There used to be trades throughout the season. You'd have them right from October right through until the trade deadline. And it wasn't all that outside of the realm of possibility that a player could be traded twice in the same season. That happened a lot too. And so I think what's happened is it's really because of the salary cap, because of the fact that every team's up against it. It's all rumor and innuendo. So I feel kind of bad for reporters, for the insiders around the NHL, because they kind of have to report on every morsel that they get. Doing so knowing that most of the trades that they're reporting speculation on probably won't happen. We're going to see guys get traded at the deadline we're not talking about. We're also going to see guys we're talking a lot about stay with their team past the deadline. And we're 17 days out from finding out which players are which. I do expect there to be some trades in the coming days. I also expect the waiver wire to be pretty busy as teams try to figure out their playoff roster. And again, when you've got so many teams that are up against the cap, it is a little bit easier to sneak guys through waivers. We've seen guys get through waivers this year, especially at the start of the season, that in a normal year would not have got through waivers. But with everybody up against the cap, it makes it more difficult. Going back as far as, November's Board of Governors meeting, they were coming and saying we'd love to make trades, but we can't. Nobody's got any cap room. And now we're into February, and there really hasn't been much in the way of movement. There's been a few pretty decent trades. The Horvat trade was decent, but that blockbuster deal that I think we're all kind of waiting on, I don't know if it's going to happen. I think maybe that's part of the reason why the excitement's there around Erik Karlsson and the potential of San Jose being able to move that contract, because that might be a huge blockbuster deal. But it definitely does have an impact on media. We're not seeing the kind of movement we normally do. This has been the case for the last few years. And so, it basically becomes a situation where it's, we think this might happen. I don't know. When's it going to happen? And then you get into, after the trade deadline, you get into free agency the following summer, and then everybody knows what's going on where. There's a lot more trade rumors, a lot more talk. I would expect the trade market to be good at the trade deadline. So on trade deadline day, I think a lot of teams are going to figure out some way around the cap, whether it's having a third team take on a little bit of the money. Look for Arizona to be a broker as an example. But I really think the robust trade activity is going to be this summer, right around the free agency time, as well as the draft. The draft weekend is going to be pretty active because the 2023 draft is considered really, really strong. But I don't expect there to be a ton of first-round draft picks going. This is supposed to be a really deep draft. I'd be kind of surprised. At the same time, and I can do this in a video. I've wanted to do a video on that anyway, so just discussing first-round picks that get traded and how many come back to haunt a team that traded for them. But at any rate, that's a whole other discussion. And we'll see how many first-rounders get moved this year. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.